Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel. And in our top stories today, one that many have been anticipating for a long time, specifically women in sports. And this, of course, has been one of those subjects that has been at the forefront of basically the transitioning of our ideology, philosophy, and worldview based upon the left. And as I have mentioned here many times on the BuzWeaver channel, that the left, given the platform by the establishment, has hijacked our culture, hijacked our institutions, and hijacked our justice system. And this was the little grains of sand that make a heap to a point to where now this has to be addressed. Now, of course, the argument will continue, but this is one of those situations and circumstances, very complex, many things going on in the background, where it was important that Donald Trump win the popular vote. Now, I want to emphasize here that I have friends that are gay and I have friends that are trans. And this isn't about them as human beings. This is about the ideology, philosophy, and worldview that has been presented to us, and through processes of the, what do they call it? You remember the boiling frog methodology? You know, if you throw a frog into hot water, he'll jump out. But if you leave him in there and heat it up, you know the philosophy, the ideology. You've heard the expression before. And so it was just a matter of time as they pushed and they pushed and they pushed to the point to where we are today. So Trump signs executive order that will ban transgender athletes from women's sports. Washington, President Trump on Wednesday signed an executive order to ban transgender girls and women from competing on sports teams that match their gender identity, making his latest move targeting transgender rights. Now think about that. The language used here is what we saw in the last 4 years, and that is, if you don't agree with the left, they will attack you. They will use language to shame you. They will use examples and illustrations of your ideology, philosophy, and worldview as being anti anything they align with. And this is the language that's being adopted here by CBS. The war on women's sports is over, Mr. Trump declared at a White House event celebrating the mandate. The order, titled Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports, mandates that Title IX, the federal law banning sex discrimination in schools, be interpreted as prohibiting the participation of transgender girls and women in female sports. Those not in compliance jeopardize any federal funding they receive, Mr. Trump said. So this is just one of those situations where I guess good judgment and understanding has to take place. Of course, there's no laws against it, as it were, excuse me. But it is a matter of how it is enforced. And I see this argument quite often with individuals. And that is, why do we have all these laws? Why do we have all this? Why do we have all that? And then some say, we enforce these, but don't enforce those. And it's just the human nature, right, within us to do certain things a certain way. We're putting every school receiving taxpayer dollars on notice, he said. A White House official who briefed reporters on the order before Mr. Trump signed it said transgender female athletes can compete on co-ed or male teams. Republicans have argued that transgender girls and women athletes have biological advantages that are unfair and unsafe for other girls and women. This should be, and see, here's the thing. For the most part, this is common sense. There is distinctive differences between men and women, right? There are, or I should say, men and women. There are distinctive differences. And it isn't a matter of politics, and it isn't a matter of ideology. It's a matter of biology, physiology, and psychology. They're just different. We are different. And I enjoy watching a British program on archaeology. And on their team, they have osteoarchaeologist. And this person is a scientist who studies human and animal skeletal remains found in archaeological sites. And at no time have I ever heard them, when they examine bones, suggest that at any point the bones are anything other than a man, a woman, a girl, or a boy. Nothing in between. Nothing in between. This isn't an ideology of bias here. When I say this, it isn't a matter of bias. It's biology. It is science. Male and female chromosomes, sex chromosomes. Humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes, with one pair determining biological sex. These are known as the sex chromosomes. Y chromosome, females have 2 chromosomes, XX, and Y chromosome, males have an X chromosome and a Y chromosome. This is very specific. This is very detailed. So again, this isn't about a biased or an ideology or philosophy or worldview to alienate or to ostracize groups of individual people. This is the science. This is what we have. And I asked ChatGPT, what are characteristics that distinguish men from women? There are various characteristics that can distinguish men from women, and these differences can be grounded in biology, psychology, and social categories. It's important to note that these distinctions and generalizations, and there is significant overlap between individuals of both genders. Also, societal roles and personal identities can influence how the characteristics are expressed. Here's a breakdown. So in other words, we're human beings, and human beings can take on certain roles and do certain things. However, there are distinctions, biological differences, as we just talked about, chromosomes, hormones, reproductive system, and secondary sexual characteristics. Now, there are, in medical records, situations where individuals may have both organs or have particular conditions, but these are very rare. These aren't as frequent and as ubiquitous as we're seeing in society today as it was being accepted. Physical and psychological differences, size and strength. On average, men tend to be physically larger and stronger with a higher muscle-to-fat ratio, or density, of bone density as well. Fat distribution, I found this kind of interesting, kind of touch on this lightly. Women generally have a higher percentage of body fat, which is more distributed over the hips, thighs, and breast. Metabolism, men typically have a higher basal metabolic rate, BMR, meaning they burn more calories at rest than women. And then you have the psychological and cognitive differences. And I wanted to point these out in a way, not to be snooty, not to be pedant, but just to make a simple, rational understanding of the distinctions between the two. And so there is a difference when men compete in women's sports because of the characteristics that men have. Now let's see how CBS is covering this, a little bit of it. We'll listen to it.
President Trump is expected to sign an executive order today banning transgender athletes from competing in girls' or women's sports. It is the latest in a series of orders impacting the trans community, including an executive order banning gender-affirming care for those under 19 years old. Now, some hospitals in several states have paused those treatments while evaluating the order. A group of trans and young adults and their parents have now filed a lawsuit to block that ban. CBS News national correspondent Lana Zak is here in Studio 55. Good to see you, my friend.
Great to be with you, Vlad.
So let's talk about this executive order on trans care. What does it say?
So there are 2 executive orders that we're talking about. The first one was shortly after President Trump came into office. That's the one on trans care. That's the one that the judge is potentially blocking, that these applicants have asked about. The other one that's going to happen today is about trans athletes and their ability to participate in sports. So the White House is telling CBS News that that's not about transgender as much as it is, in their words, keeping men out of women's sports. But this particular executive order, it says it's a policy of the United States that will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support the so-called transition of a child from one sex to another. And it will rigorously enforce all laws that prohibit or limit these destructive and life-altering procedures. And that's the one that 7 transgender people have sued.
So one of the things that I've
And it always seems easy, doesn't it, when you're reading the words, when you're reading along with me or reading along with her. And it's a different story when you're actually producing this as content creators or presenters or journalists or reporters, because I think we have a tendency for our brains to kind of overwork and be overly aware of it. And so that's why we have that sense of timing the way it is, or at least for me and as someone who does readings and so forth. But as we can see here, it's a very sensitive topic, and there are going to be challenges. And I want to emphasize here that this isn't about making people do things they don't want to do kind of thing, right? We don't want to ostracize. We don't want to alienate. We don't want individuals, because for me personally, I see everyone as Americans. We are all Americans. and we're protected under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So there isn't a need, in my opinion, for someone to have anything special, like special rights, right? We have targeting transgender rights. Why do we have these specific rights or laws for particular individuals when we're all Americans, right? We address these things based on a person-to-person basis. Now, I'm not saying there shouldn't be these types of things. I'm just saying, what is their significance? What is its role? What is it actually trying to do? And is it discriminatory? Is it segregating? Is it alienating? Is it isolating individuals and saying this group of people can't interact with this group of people because this group of people have these sorts of views and this other sort of group of people have this sort of view, so we need to make these distinctions, which is where equity came from and all of these ideologies, philosophies, and worldviews of the left. And the thing is, we can't micromanage human beings. It's just our existence is very complex. Like logic isn't an absolute that governs the universe, nor is it a law that we use to govern our daily behaviors and laws. Human beings are complex creatures, and we do complex things, and we think in complex ways. And these are just one of those situations that needed to be addressed, and unfortunately, in some instances, it can be harsh, and it can offend certain individual peoples with certain particular mindsets. And so I don't want to be insensitive to this because I have a friend who is transgender, and my mind has not changed about this person at all. They're still the same person that I know. They're still the same human being that I know and I interact with. I don't make any sort of mental or political or any bias towards them whatsoever, other than they're a fellow human being. And so that's how I try to look at this, is from that perspective. But there is a distinction between men and women, boys and girls, when it comes to sports. Because men, as we just saw from ChatGPT, do have characteristics that are different. So this isn't about me trying to impose my ideology, philosophy, and worldview onto someone else, or that the left should have a position that everyone is against them because of their ideology, philosophies, and worldview as human beings. Now, when it comes to people, we should not judge people, but people do have certain levels of capability when it comes to their actions. So we can judge their actions and determine how they made those choices and how they go into a particular direction. And so for me, I see everyone as Americans. So I don't see that anyone should have any sort of special right over another individual, or that we need special rights or special conditions or equity or any of these sorts of things that happen. But clearly this needed to be addressed because we've seen injuries, we've seen other problems, we've seen issues in changing rooms and these sorts of things where individuals can take advantage of these situations to be able to propagate whatever ideology, philosophy, and worldview that they have. So it's very interesting. I welcome your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. Have you been impacted by this in any way, shape, or form? Do you yourself or your kids or people that you know participate in sports that were concerned about this sort of topic? And do you think this is going to remedy this situation? We'll have to keep an eye on it, but I do welcome your thoughts and opinions on it. I want to thank all of you guys across New Tech, that's BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey, for your guys' continued participation. Your likes, your shares, and your comments are incredibly important, but if you want to help the channel further, of course, you can always follow me on social media as well as participate with my links down below. That's Amazon and Trust Zone if you're interested in VPN, or if you order frequently from Amazon, as I just did the other day, as I ordered from my friend who I mentioned earlier. I ordered from their Amazon site because they are a creator as well. And so I placed an order under their particular Amazon site. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all of you guys for your continued support here in 2025. It's extraordinary what we're seeing. It really is a change in our culture and our environment and what's going on in our country. But appearing there on the screen for all of you watching on YouTube specifically, that would be the channel icon appearing there, so you guys can click on that to subscribe, as well as to select notifications. That way you know when there's content here on the channel. And I'll see all you guys in the next video.